Torgarmah, the Ingush, the Chechens, and the Armenians. But before we get too deep into the video, first I want to tell you guys about my social media platforms. So I have a Clubhouse account, and we can actually talk to one another on it. I also host Clubhouse rooms every now and then where I might talk about history and genetics of the Middle East and Africa. I have a Twitter page, a Facebook account, and a Facebook page, as well as a Instagram, all titled The Hebrew of Israel. And what I typically do on these platforms is post upcoming videos as well as slides for my presentations. And so just be on the lookout for all of that on my social media platforms. And if you want to support me financially for the channel, you can look at my Patreon as well as my PayPal and my GoFundMe. And with all of that out of the way, let's begin with the video. What I find interesting about the Nak peoples, Chechens and Ingush, is that they have a biblical tradition of descending from Togarmah. Caucus or Kavaskus was the supposed ancestor of the Chechens and Ingush, according to Georgian chronicles. And as you can see right here, parents Togarmah, great grandparent Japheth. Anyways, Koskus or Kavaskus was the supposed ancestor of Chechens and Ingush according to the Georgian chronicles. The legend has it that he was a son of Torgarmah and thus the brother of Heos, Maviokos, Lekos, referred to as the ancestor of Lesgic peoples, Heros, Kartelos, known to be the ancestor of Georgian people, and Egros took their origin. Koskus' son Derzuk, which we mention quite often, is said to be the ancestor of the Chechens and Ingush. And here is actually, one of the Caucasian people's portraits of this tradition of the sons of Togarmah or Togarmos in their tongue. And so here's just a chart showing it from Noah to Japheth to Gomer to Togarmah to Koskus, his son literally being named Koskus, which will of course be the Caucasians. So it says, according to Leonti Meveroni, the 11th century Georgian chronicler, the word Caucasian is derived from the Nak people's ancestor Kavaskus. Derzuk was mentioned by the chronologies as the most distinguished among the descendants of Kavasks, who led his people, the Derzuks, into the mountains, where they would become the ancestor of today's Vanak peoples. Before his death, Togarmah, divided the country among his sons, with Kavaskus, the eldest and most noble, receiving the Central Caucasus. Kavaskus engendered the Chechen tribes and his descendants, Derzuk, who took residence in a mountainous region later called Dzukesterznia after him, established a strong state in the 4th and 3rd centuries BC. Derzuks and Nak-Amtinians were remnants of the Eretrians. The Derzuks were also known as the Hurrian tribe. The origin of Chechnya population, and it says, according to Letoni Mavroni, the 11th century Georgian chronicler, the word Caucasian is derived from the Nak ancestor Kavaskus. According to George Anach Badez of Illinois State University, the Vanaks are the ancient natives of the Caucasus. It is noteworthy that according to the genealogical table drawn up by Leonti Meveroni, the legendary forefather of the Veneks was Kavaskus, hence the name Kavaskians, Caucasians, one of the ethnocons met in the ancient Georgian written sources, significantly signifying the ancestors of the Chechens and Ingush. As appears from above, the Veneks, at least by name, are presented as the most Caucasian people of all the Caucasians. Caucasus, Kavaskians, in the Georgian historical tradition. American linguist Joanna Nichols has used language to connect the modern people of the Caucasus region to the ancient farmers of the Fertile Crescent, and her research suggests that farmers of the region were Proto-Nakdangestanis. Nichols stated, the Nakdangestani language are the closest thing we have to a direct continuation of the cultural and linguistic community that gave rise to Western civilization. Derzuks in the Georgian Chronicles and the Armenian Chronicles. Ancestors of the modern Chechens and Ingush were known as Derzuks. Before his death, Togarmah divided the country amongst his sons with Tarvoskus Caucasus, the eldest and most noble, receiving the central Caucasus. Kavoskas engendered the Chechen tribes and his descendants, Derzuk, who took residence in the mountainous region, later called Derzurkstia after him, established a strong state in the 4th and 3rd centuries BC. And so this is from the book, The Chechens, a handbook. And it says, the Georgian Chronicles of Leonti Meveroni, which refer to events that go back as far as the pre-Christian era, include the first written record of the Nakmanatinians, progenitors of the Nochi. According to Meveroni, the Nakchimatians were descendants of Torgarmah, the mythical progenitor of the Caucasian peoples, who moved together with his sons to the Caucasus from Assyria. Before his death, Torgarmah divided the country amongst his sons, with Tarvoskus, the eldest and most noble, receiving the central Caucasus. Tarvoskus engendered the Chechen tribes and his descendants. Derzuk, who took residence in the mountainous region, later called Derzurkstia after him, established a strong state in the 4th and 3rd centuries BC. The Japhetic theory of the Soviet linguistic N.Y. Mar proposed that all native language families in the Caucasus, including Northwest, Northeast, and Southern Caucasian or South Caucasian, belong to the same Japhetic language group, which in linguistics implied common ancestry. And I actually would agree with that. It would make a lot of sense for the Caucasian language to basically be from Japheth rather than Shem or Ham. Caucasian is likely a Japhetic language. J. Nichols proposed that the Nakdangestani language family is long indigenous to the Caucasus, suggested by fairly seamless archaeological continuity for the last 8,000 years or more in Central Dagestani or Central Dagestan. This is also reinforced by the distribution of loan words from ancient Mesopotamia into early Nakdangestani. The structure of the Nakdangestani language family, with the greatest divergence within and between branches laying in their southern reaches, would suggest that pre-Proto-Nagtangestanis spread into the Caucasus from the southwest. And so this is from the Venex, the Chechen and Ingush book, and it says, "It is interesting to note that an opinion of the Caucasian unity based on the community of origin come into existence in the Caucasus very long ago." Litoni Mevroni, a prominent Georgian author of the 11th century, begins his work on the history of ancient Georgia with the mythical times of the Caucasus and gives a genealogical tree of the Caucasus peoples, representing the Armenians, Georgians, Vanex, Dagestani tribes, and others, as the descendants of legendary Torgarmah, their common ancestor. According to Mevroni, the descendants of Togarmah, inhabiting all over the Caucasus, lived in friendship and came out together against the outer enemies to defeat their native land. To defend their native land. The Vanex, as it is already known to the reader, are the ancient natives of the Caucasus. It is noteworthy that according to the genealogical table drawn up by Litoni Mevroni, the legendary forefather of the Vanex was Kavoskas, hence the name Kavoskians, one of the ethnicons met in the ancient Georgian written sources signifying the ancestor of the Chechens and Ingush. As appears from above, the Vanex, at least by name, are represented by the most Caucasian people of all the Caucasians, Caucasus, Kavoskians, in the Georgian historical tradition. According to the version of Litoni Mevroni, Kavoskas and his brothers Liek migrated from Transcaucasia to the uninhabited northern Caucasus and occupied the territory from the mountains to the south of the Volga. According to archaeological data, in the Bronze Age, the ancient Caucasian tribes inhabited not only the mountains of the North Caucasus, but also the lowlands going far into the steppe. So Nak peoples, like the Chechens and Ingush, have oral traditions that they come from Torgarmah, his son specifically Caucasus. Now, this is very interesting because if you recall from previous videos, the Armenians are another people, of the Caucasus that have a tradition of descending from Togarmah, but their ancestor is named Hayek the Great. Hayek is the legendary patriarch and founder of the Armenian nation. His story is told in the History of Armenia attributed to the Armenian historian Moses of Caron. In Moses of Caron's account, Hayek, son of Torgarmah, had a child named Amnek, or Amranek, while he was living in Babylon. After the arrogant Titan Bel made himself king over all, Hayek immigrated to the region near Mount Ararat. Hayek relocated near Mount Ararat with an extended household of at least 300 and settled there, founding a village he named Hayastan. Bel decided to march against him with a massive force, but Hayek was warned ahead of time by Kedmos of his impending approach. He assembled his own army along the shores of Lake Ban and told them that they must defeat and kill Bel or die trying to do so, rather than become his slaves. Hayek and his people, from the time of their forefathers, Noah and Japheth, had migrated south towards the warmer lands near Babylon. But proud Hayek refused to submit to Bel. As soon as his son, Amranek, was born, Hayek rose up and led his people northward into the land of Ararat. Now that's very, very interesting, very almost ironic, because basically, from the sound of things, Hayek's people were in the Caucasus at first, and then they came into Mesopotamia, but because of Bel, they then left Mesopotamia. So it's like a back and forth migration. And that kind of does fit with the archaeology of the Nak peoples. Like many people are saying, it seems like first the ancestors of the Nak were in the Fertile Crescent, and then they went into the Caucasus. So I find that to be very ironic in a way how this story of Hayek seems to fit that. And here's from Ancient History Encyclopedia, Armenian mythology, and it says, this is the story of Hayek and Bel, and places the origins of the Armenian people as the descendants of the biblical Noah via his son Japheth. Hayek, a descendant of Japheth and noted archer, hence his later association with Orion, rebelled one day against Bel, the evil and repressive Babylonian tyrant, and returned back, there's the key word, back to his homeland around Mount Ararat in ancient Armenia. So with him returning back means he came from the Caucasus first and then went to Mesopotamia and then went back and forth migration. Anyways, Bel followed Hayek and his relations so that a mighty battle followed in which Bel was killed. Hayek then gave his name to his descendants, the Hay people, and the name of the region of Armenia in the Armenian language, Hayastan. And this is from Insight on the Scriptures, Volume 2, and it says Togarmah. Many commentators connect Togarmah with the Armenians. The Armenians themselves traditionally claim to be descended from Hayek, son of Togarmah. Ancient Greek writers speak of the Armenians as famed for their horses and mules. So one thing that I find interesting about the story of Hayek in connection to the Chechens and the Ingush is that the story is very similar to their history and what we find in archaeology. The story of Hayek is basically that the descendants of Torgarmah, i.e. Hayek and his family, started off in Mesopotamia, the Fertile Crescent. Then they went to the Caucasus with some of their people staying. So that sounds very familiar. The Chechens and the Ingush, one of the Nak peoples who lived in the highlands of the North Caucasus region since prehistory. There is archaeological evidence of historical continuity dating back to 3000 BC, as well as evidence pointing to their ancestors' migration from the Fertile Crescent 10,000 through 8000 BC. According to Litoni Mevroni, the 11th century Georgian chronicler, the word Caucasian is derived from the Venek ancestor Kavoskas. According to Professor George Anek Bedez of Ilia State University, the Veneks are the ancient natives of the Caucasus. It is noteworthy that, according to the genealogical table drawn up by Litoni Mevroni, the legendary forefather of the Veneks was Kavoskas, hence the name Kavoskians, one of the ethnicons met in the ancient Georgian written sources, signifying the ancestors of the Chechens and Ingush. As appears from the above, the Veneks, at least by name, are represented as the most Caucasian people of all the Caucasians, Caucasus, Kavoskas, Kavoskians, in the Georgian historical tradition. In an article in Science magazine, Bernice Worthrich states that American linguist Dr. Jonah Nichols has used language to connect modern people of the Caucasus region to the ancient farmers of the Fertile Crescent, and that her research suggests that farmers of the region were Proto-Nak Dangestanis. Nichols is quoted as stating that the Nak Dangestani languages are the closest thing we have to a direct continuation of the cultural and linguistic community that gave rise to Western civilization. Jonah Nichols holds that the Thurzuks were descended from extremely ancient migrations from the Fertile Crescent to the Caucasus, perhaps due to population or political pressures back in the Fertile Crescent. Very interesting. Kind of fits with the story of Hayek and Bell, political pressures. Anyways, others who believe, well, actually, that's good right there, dealing with just the fact that they were in the Fertile Crescent and going back and forth. So, according to Bernice Withrich's article, Peering into the Past with Words, John and Nichols showed that linguistic evidence indicates the ancestors of the Nak people migrated to the slopes of the Caucasus from the Fertile Crescent, where farming and raising sheep and cattle had been discovered. So, again, just showing you this migration, they're going from the Fertile Crescent into the Caucasus, much like how Hayek's story is set. A cuneiform style of writing and runic type inscriptions are found on ancient monuments in Chechnya, some dating back to the 3rd millennium BC. However, no serious work has been done to interpret them. Nak has roots that can be traced to some languages of ancient Mesopotamia. There is a general consensus that the Hurrian, Oratrian, and Nak Dangestani language families are connected. I. M. Dinghoff and S. A. Starsman in 1986 have demonstrated more than 100 common roots between the two language groups. This also connects with the high likelihood that Sumerians are just a branch of Caucasians related to the Chechens and the Ingush peoples, basically Northeast Caucasian peoples. This is from Sumerians had connections with the Caucasus, and it says, some of the Sumerians withdrew and migrated to the Caucasus, where they developed the Proto-Hurartian language, and then those whom we know as Hurrians and Oratrians are ethnic Sumerians who switched to Hurrian and Oratrian, but retained in their language a few basic words of their original language. So the story of Hayek the Armenian, along with the oral history and anthropology of the Chechens and Ingush, could be true. And what I find to be fascinating is that it all pretty much connects with one another. Furthermore, keep in mind that Sumerians, Chechens, and Ingush, all these Caucasian groups, they all have high amounts of haplogroup J. The English have 89% of J2 live DNA, which is the highest known frequency in the world, and J2 is closely associated with the Fertile Crescent. Again, haplogroup J2, A4B *M67 comprise 51 through 79% of the Y chromosomes in the English and 3 Chechenian populations, Northeast Caucasus Nak linguistic group. Finally, haplogroup J1 *M267 comprise 44 through 99% of Southeast Caucasus Dangestani linguistic group. Haplogroup J accounts for 55.1% of the Iraqi samples, reaching 84.6% in the Marsh Arabs, one of the highest frequencies reported so far. Skipping down right here, it says, almost all Marsh Arab J chromosomes, 96%, belong to the J1 M267 clade. One thing seems to be certain, that the peoples of the Caucasus, Armenians, Chechens, Ingush, Georgians, and others, from all their oral history and even in anthropology, everything points to them being the descendants of Togarmah. Togarmah is a figure in the Table of Nations in Genesis 10, the list of the descendants of Noah that represents the peoples known to the ancient Hebrews. Togarmah is among the descendants of Japheth and is thought to represent some people located in Anatolia. When dealing with his sons, his children, according to tradition or heritage and understanding of other peoples, is that you had Hayek, Caucasus, and Keratos. And then you had grandchildren as well. Kavaskus or Caucasus was the supposed ancestor of Chechens and Ingush, according to Georgian chronologies or chronicles. Armenian and Georgian tradition. Another Togarmah, this one being the son of both Tyrus and Gomer, is mentioned by Armenian Moses of Caron and Georgian Letoni Mevroni, who regarded Togarmah as the founder of their nations, along with other Caucasian peoples. According to Moses of Caron's History of Armenia and to Letoni Mevroni's medieval Georgian chronicles, Togarmah was thought to have lived in Babylon before he received the land between the two seas and two mountains, i.e. the Caucasus, in his possession. He then settled near Mount Ararat and divided his land among his sons. Hayek, first son of Togarmah, inherited Mount Ararat and founded the Armenian nation. Kartolos settled in northeast from Ararat, founder of Kartli, who united other brothers and founded the Georgian nation. And then Togarmah, according to various Armenian and Georgian and Caucasian traditions, had other sons that link up, of course, with modern Caucasian populations with their ancient names. I'm going to skip down to the last two that are highlighted in blue and yellow. There's another son called Herlos, settled in the eastern part of Ararat, and then Caucasus, or Kavoskas, that we talked about with the Chechens and Ingush, settled beyond the Caucasus range. So that's basically the Caucasian tradition of Togarmah, which would match up and does make a lot of sense. Also, if the peoples of the Caucasus are the descendants of Togarmah, then it's highly likely that Haplogroup J is from Togarmah as well, since Haplogroup J is a Caucasian marker in origin. Both Georgian hunter-gatherer samples were associated with Haplogroup J with Katos, belonging to the sub-haplogroup J2A. In a study exploring J haplogroups in 445 individuals from Eurasia, J2A was found at highest frequency in Georgia and Iraq. And we talked about Iraq with the Marsh Arabs, descendants of Sumerians, non-Semitic speakers. Anyways, it is intriguing that both the mitochondrial and Y chromosome haplogroups in our ancient Georgian samples have been associated with the Neolithicization of Europe. This tentatively suggests a genetic link between Georgian hunter-gatherers and early European migrants from the Near East. And of course, we know about the Armenians being connected with the Yamnaya and Proto-European populations. So this is where we end Togarmah, the Ingush, the Chechens, and the Armenians. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like, subscribe, and share the video. And don't forget to click the bell and leave a comment for any questions you might have. And follow my social media platforms to get more information. And with all of that out of the way, have a great day and shalom.